You have written, produced, presented documentaries for NGOs in Bangladesh, Kenya, Uganda, Papua New Guinea, India, National Breast Cancer Foundation. So tell us a bit about what inspires you, as you are a big advocate for social justice and equality. What led you into that field?
I guess my dad's social justice bent, number one, and then number two, the issue of women and girls in the developing world, because gender inequality is a spectrum disorder. And while we do have challenges in developed countries, in developing countries, their challenges are 100-fold. I've got a photo from when I was in Uganda. Thank you, Wayne. Look, this is a really dark story to tell over lunch, and I will truncate it because I know we've just had a beautiful lunch. But I went to Uganda with a mob called Action Aid in 2012, and this woman's name is Jennifer. She changed the domestic violence laws in Uganda. Her case was so horrific that I won't even go into it. It's the worst thing I've ever heard. She stumbled into the Women's Refuge, which is behind us, 3 hours out of Kampala, and said to the women at Action Aid, "What can you do? This is just absolutely horrific. My life is falling apart." They not only helped her with her personal life by getting her out of that dangerous situation, setting her up in a new house, getting her a sewing machine so she could sew clothes from home as a small business, getting her children out of that environment. They also walked with her into the Ugandan Parliament. There are more women in the Ugandan Parliament than in the Australian Federal Parliament. The women walked out and said, "We are not coming back and legislating on anything until you bring in domestic violence laws in this country." Because isn't that brilliant? I mean, this one woman. At that point, domestic violence was at a rate of 80%. They finally brought in domestic violence laws in the country and it's dropped dramatically. The other story in Uganda, which I found really fascinating, was about the influence of men in so far as male champions of change are concerned. It's wonderful to see so many blokes here today. I went into this village and this guy walked out. He would have been 7 foot tall, wearing a bright white starched linen suit. And he had this booming, mellifluous voice. He was the one who was the tribal leader who changed the custom in the area so women could finally inherit property. Prior to that, women couldn't inherit property, and that's a huge change in Uganda. I said to him, "How did you manage to convince the other men of the tribe to do this?" And he told this story. He was the most charming storyteller. It was one of those examples of someone being a true charismatic leader who can affect great change. He said, "When I first started talking about women's empowerment, people thought I was a hermaphrodite. And then I explained to them that women's rights are human rights." And I thought, God, you could convince me of anything. He's that charming. So that was a really inspiring story from that trip. Oh yes, quickly on India. I went to India a couple of years after Uganda with World Vision. It's an interesting reminder. At each of these places we did documentaries and feature stories and radio interviews. It's an important reminder that as far as we move forward, it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. In India, the dowry system is on the increase again because of the rising wealth of the middle class. People want to show off with the big car or the big house to give as a dowry. Female feticide is on the rise because it used to be a midwife would look at your bump, feel your bump and say, "Oh, I think you're having a girl, you probably should have an abortion." Well, now they're getting cheap ultrasounds from China and doctors are saying, "You are having a girl, you should definitely have an abortion." So as far as we move forward, we also move a couple of steps back.